got caught wearing a sexy outfit to the club through Facebook. What he did next shocked me.
I never thought one night out would change everything. But then he saw the photos, and now I feel like my entire life's falling apart. Hello, Reddit. First time posting here, and honestly, I never thought I'd be the kind of person to spill their relationship drama online. But here we are. I'm seriously at a loss for what to do. I've tried talking to him, tried explaining myself, but it's like nothing's getting through to him, and I feel like I'm watching everything slip away. I don't even know if anyone can help me at this point, but maybe just venting it all out here will help me make sense of it all. My name's Ashley. I'm 29, and I'm married to Jason, who's the same age. We've been together since college, and I always thought we were one of those perfect couples you hear about, strong, steady, and supportive. Jason has always been, well, kind of the perfect husband, if I'm being honest. He's always been the guy who's got my back, no matter what. He's supportive, incredibly loyal, and just so rational. Like, even in the toughest moments, Jason never lets his emotions take over. He's the kind of guy who's level-headed and calm about almost everything. That part of him, I used to love the way he was able to maintain such calm when a situation got tense, or when I, at times, overemphasized something silly. He was always the sensible one in the relationship throughout. Well, of course, we have quarreled as any two persons in love and in a relationship would. Jason can be a bit stingy at times, and when I'm wanting to go out and have some fun, cut loose a bit. That is where we differ most. I am more of the spontaneous type, the type that will drop everything at the blink of an eye and head out, while he is the complete opposite of me. Careful, realistic. He would rather spend a night at home than go outside, but we never let that come in the way we never let that come in between us. Looking back, maybe I took a lot of his patience for granted. He was always the one who'd bend first, who'd try to smooth things over even when we'd clash. It felt like he'd do anything to keep me happy. And yeah, I guess over the years I got used to that. I never thought one night out, just one random girls' night at a club, would be enough to shake the foundation of our relationship. But here we are, and I'm starting to wonder if I really understood him at all. So this night out had been planned for a while as a girls' night with my closest friends, just us unwinding and having fun like we used to. Life has been kind of stressful lately, with work, responsibilities, and honestly just the everyday grind. It felt like we all needed a break, something to shake off the routine and just let loose for once. As I began preparing, I felt this little rush of energy go through me. I chose this dress I've had for a while, but never really worn anywhere. It was daring. I admit I stepped out of my comfort zone, but for some reason it just seemed natural that night. It was indeed more on the revealing side, a little above thigh length, touching my body more than what I would have preferred. But I wanted to feel the confidence, at least the desire to be reckless. I had forgotten what dressing up like that felt like. That sort of confidence, As I looked in the mirror, I felt amazing, like a different version of myself. But in the back of my mind, there was this little voice saying, would Jason really be okay with this? I could almost picture his face, his eyebrows raising a bit if he saw me like this. He's always been a bit protective, maybe even conservative in his own way. He's the type to think that dressing too bold might send the wrong message. I knew he'd probably think it was a bit much, maybe even disapprove. But I brushed it off. I figured, it's just one night, just me and the girls. What's the harm? I didn't tell him about the dress, as I know that he would have something smart to say regarding it, and I wasn't willing to entertain that just yet. I just wished to be a normal person for a day where I don't need to convince anybody about anything or pretend to be someone else. Besides, I wasn't causing any harm, was I? I was just going outside to dance, to laugh, and to have fun with my friends. I had been waiting for this time since forever. As the night went on, I felt amazing. Every now and then, I'd catch people glancing my way, and it felt good. It felt like I was reclaiming some part of myself I'd lost over the years, that confidence, that boldness I used to have before life got so serious. It was freeing in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. In the back of my mind, I knew Jason would probably never see the dress, and honestly, I didn't think it would be a big deal even if he did. I wasn't hiding anything, but at the same time, I didn't want to deal with any talk about it, if that makes sense. I just wanted one night where I could forget about all that and just be me. So after the night out, I didn't think much of it. It was enjoyable, I came out delighted with the day, and for once did not have to care about anything else but me. The next morning, I woke up a bit drunk, looked through my phone, and I had all the typical messages, some pictures sent by friends during the night, and of course the tags on Facebook. My friend Sarah had posted a bunch of group photos from the night. You know, the ones everyone crowded together, some blurry shots of us dancing, and a few where we were all just laughing. In one of the photos, you could see me clearly in the dress. I mean, they were innocent photos, right? Just us girls having a good time. But then I noticed something. Jason had liked the post. I didn't really think much of it at first because he's friends with most of the girls. So it's not unusual for him to come across our stuff on Facebook. I figured he'd just scrolled through, saw us having fun, and clicked like, without giving it a second thought. But then, this little voice in the back of my head started to wonder, had he really looked at the photos? Like, really looked? I brushed it off quickly, though. I mean, why would he care? We were just out, harmless fun, nothing wild. Besides, he was not one of those who could make fuss, much less over some photos that were posted in social media. So I left it and worried about something else, assuming there was no problem with it. But standing here, perhaps I should have understood then that this like wasn't just a pass. So when I got home later that day, everything felt off. Jason was there, sitting on the couch, scrolling on his phone like usual, but he didn't even look up when I walked in. Normally, he'd ask me about my day or crack some joke, but this time, nothing, just silence. It was weird, and I could feel this weird tension hanging in the air. At first, I didn't think it was about the photos. I mean, what was there to be mad about, right? But the longer the silence dragged on, the more I started to feel this little pit in my stomach. I tried to play it casual, asked him if he wanted dinner, but he just shrugged and said, "Yeah, sure," without even looking at me. That's when I knew something was up. Finally, as I was setting the table, he just came out with it. He asked, "So, why didn't you tell me about last night?" His voice was calm, but I could feel something beneath it. I tried to brush it off, acting like it was no big deal, and told him, "Oh, it was just a girls' night, nothing special." I laughed a bit, hoping it would lighten the mood, but he didn't smile. He just nodded, looking down at his phone. Then he queried, "And the dress?" Damn, that was the question that brought me to my knees. I did not think that he would be that direct about it. I instantly failed at this, said something like, "Oh, come on, it was just for fun, a little confidence boost, that's all." I could easily tell he was not happy with that kind of response. Jason just went quiet again, and it was honestly worse than if he'd just been mad. I mean, he wasn't yelling, he wasn't calling me out, he just looked hurt, and that was harder to handle. I tried to explain that it was just a one-time thing, that I wanted to feel good about myself for a night, but every word I said just seemed to make him retreat further. Eventually he straightened up, grinned, and told me, "You know, Ashley, I don't mind if you go out with friends. But why didn't you feel that we could sit and discuss it with me, or that you had to conceal the dress from me?" That one stung, because at some level I realized he was correct. I used to make it a point to never reveal anything to him with the aim of never getting a reaction or starting a conversation. I didn't know what to say, so I just stood there feeling this mix of guilt and frustration. Part of me wanted to defend myself, to tell him he was overreacting. But the other part of me knew that he had every reason to feel the way he did. He didn't say much else after that, just shook his head slightly and said he needed some space to think. And then he walked out of the room, leaving me there with all these unspoken things hanging between us. That night, the house felt colder and emptier than ever before, and for the first time, I started wondering if I'd really messed things up. After that night, things, well, they just weren't the same. This is when Jason began to distance himself in a way that I had never really witnessed before. Usually he was quite verbal, playful, or just plain nice, and talked on his own while we conversed. Now it is as if there is a glass that separates us. He didn't seem to want to acknowledge me. At best, he would answer in single words, and every time I would attempt to start a conversation, all I got was a grunt or a garbled response. At first, I told myself he was just processing it, that he'd get over it and things would go back to normal. But as the days went by, that distance only grew. It was like he was there, but not really there. I'd walk into the room and he'd just glance at me before looking away, like he didn't know who I was anymore. It was frustrating, and I didn't know how to handle it. I started trying little things to smooth things over, things I thought might help us reconnect. I made his favorite dinner one night, hoping he'd notice the effort, maybe crack a smile or at least say something. But he just ate quietly, thanked me at the end, and went back to scrolling on his phone without a second glance. It was like nothing I did mattered. I even tried to bring up funny stories from the past, things we'd usually laugh about together, but he barely reacted. It was as if he'd shut down completely, and I was starting to feel like a stranger in my own home. That's when the guilt started creeping in. I found myself lying awake at night, replaying everything in my head. I kept thinking, did I really do something so wrong? Was it just a dress? Or was there something more to it that I didn't see? I wanted to believe it was a harmless night out, just a silly decision. But seeing Jason like this made me question everything. I kept telling myself he'd come around, that he just needed time. But the longer it went on, the more isolated I felt. I didn't even feel comfortable reaching out to him anymore because every time I tried, it was like he'd already drifted a little further away. And the worst part was, he never once got angry, never raised his voice, never had that big confrontation where I could defend myself or even apologize properly. He just kept pulling away, and it was driving me crazy. When the world went to sleep, I began to doubt what I had done. Perhaps I should have revealed to him about the dress from the beginning, or perhaps I shouldn't have minimized the issue. But there always lingered a word in the back of my mind that stated in reality that I was the one who lost your trust, and I wouldn't know how it could be regained. All right, so here's where things get messy. And honestly, this is the part that's hardest for me to even admit. I guess it's time to be real, though, no matter how bad it makes me look. That night at the club, after a couple of drinks, things got a little out of hand. I didn't go out with any intentions of doing anything wrong. It was supposed to just be a fun night with my girls. But then, somewhere along the line, my judgment just slipped. There was this guy there, someone I hadn't seen in years. We used to be friends back in high school, and it was a surprise seeing him again. We started talking, catching up on old memories, and I don't know, it just felt easy, like we were back in those carefree days, just chatting and laughing. After a few drinks, though, things shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't just friendly reminiscing. He was complimenting me, saying how good I looked, how much I'd changed since high school. And I have to admit, it felt nice. It was flattering. With Jason being so distant lately, I think I just soaked it up without thinking. Then one thing led to another and we started dancing. I convinced myself it was harmless, just a little fun, but as the night went on, I started to realize it was more than that. At one point, he leaned in a little too close and I didn't back away. We didn't kiss, nothing like that, but it was close. Close enough to feel that rush of excitement, that feeling of crossing a line I shouldn't have crossed. I hate admitting it, but I felt seen, and in that moment, I didn't pull back. The whole thing lasted maybe a few minutes before I came to my senses, realizing how far it had gone. I laughed it off, said something about needing to get back to my friends, and walked away. But the feeling stuck with me, and I spent the rest of the night trying to convince myself it was nothing. Just a little harmless flirting that maybe went a tiny bit too far. I told myself it didn't mean anything, that it was just a silly moment that didn't matter. But even as I tried to brush it off, there was this nagging guilt gnawing at me. The next morning I felt awful, not in the I cheated kind of way, but just uncomfortable, like I knew deep down I'd crossed a line. I tried to bury it, convincing myself that it was all in my head, that I hadn't really done anything wrong. I mean, it's not like we kissed or anything, right? But still, that pit of guilt wouldn't go away. I kept replaying it in my head, trying to rewrite it into something less Questionable. Then, a few days later, Jason got wind of it. I never thought until he described me how until he sat me down and told me he knew about the night from our mutual friend. It seemed as if someone at the club recognized us and saw me with that guy, and then felt the need to tell Jason. Just my luck, right? I mean to tell you that of all the times that someone could be watching, it had to be that particular night. When Jason confronted me, I tried to play it off, to make it sound like it wasn't a big deal. I said it was just some harmless dancing, a couple of drinks, and that nothing happened, but he looked right through me. I could tell he already knew it was more than that he'd heard enough to feel betrayed. I tried to explain that it didn't mean anything, that I was just caught up in the moment, but he just sat there looking at me like he didn't even recognize who I was. For the first time in our entire relationship, he didn't say anything back. He just sat there, this hurt look on his face, as if he was processing it all, trying to decide if he could even believe me. And the silence? It was crushing. I wanted him to yell, to say something, anything, but instead, he just got up and walked out of the room. I felt like my heart had dropped out of my chest. I sat there alone with this wave of guilt crashing over me, realizing that maybe this wasn't something I could just brush off or justify. That moment, seeing him walk away like that, was like this gut punch. Like everything I'd been telling myself to make it okay suddenly shattered, and I was left sitting there with the reality of what I'd done. And for the first time, I started to understand that things might never go back to the way they were. I'd barely had time to process the whole thing when Jason came back. I'd been expecting, well, honestly, I don't know what I was expecting. Maybe anger? Yelling? Some kind of reaction that would let me defend myself, or at least explain things. But instead, he just sat down, calm, collected, like he'd made up his mind about something. There was this quiet determination in his face that I hadn't seen before, and it immediately made me nervous. Then he stared at me, and I could see the pain, but he did not shout at me. He did not ask for anything. He just said, "I need to tell you how disappointed I am." And that stung more than any yelling or finger-pointing that had ever been done in my direction. He said, "I can't believe that you did not tell me that you had something like that going on, that it has gotten this far." He stated that he assumed we have trust, and for him trust he could not imagine a better word. I tried to speak up, to apologize, to tell him that it wasn't as bad as it looked, that it was just a mistake, but he held up his hand, gently but firmly. "Ashley, I need time to think about this," he said. "I don't know if I can stay here right now. I need space." I was stunned. Jason was always the one who'd calm things down, who'd find a way to work through issues together. The thought of him needing space or time to think was the last thing I expected. I felt this panic rising in my chest, and I tried to tell him it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. But he just looked at me, quiet and steady, and said, "That's not the point. You kept this from me. You let it happen and you didn't think it would affect us. I need to figure out if I can move past this." I felt like I'd been slapped. His words cut deeper than anything else. I'd never seen him so composed and distant. He explained that he'd be staying with his brother for a while. He needed to clear his head, he said, to decide what he wanted. The calmness in his voice was chilling. There was no anger, no outbursts, just disappointment, and it was somehow so much worse. I tried to hold on to his arm, pleading with him, but he gently pulled away and told me he'd be back when he was ready to talk. And then he left, just like that. The door closing behind him felt like this final blow, and I just sat there feeling completely hollow. This was Jason, the guy who'd always been by my side no matter what, the one who'd support me, listen to me, even forgive me when I'd mess up. And now he was gone, just like that, leaving me with nothing but silence. I tried calling him a few times over the next couple of days, but he didn't pick up. I left messages, texts all saying the same thing, that I was sorry, that I'd made a mistake, that I was willing to do anything to make it right, but he never responded. That's when it really hit me how serious he was about needing space. In a way, I think I kept expecting him to come back, to calm down and realize it wasn't worth all this. But that didn't happen. He stayed gone, and that silence grew heavier with each passing day. I felt like I was drowning in my own guilt, wondering if I'd just lost the one person who'd always stood by me. It felt so surreal the time he didn't go ballistic, didn't raise his voice or do something outrageous. It just felt very palpable, like it wasn't something he would just one day wake up and decide he doesn't feel like having women in his life anymore, and that scared me. Thus I saw that I did not appreciate him and thought he would still be there waiting for me, and he would always forgive me regardless. But now, when he distances himself, I realized how much pain I've inflicted on him. I started questioning everything. Why did I even let things get that far? Why hadn't I just told him about the night out? But it was too late for those questions. All I could do was wait, hoping he'd come back, that he'd forgive me, that somehow we could find a way to fix this. But the longer he stayed away, the more I started to understand that maybe things were broken in a way I couldn't fix. And the worst part, I had no one to blame but myself. After Jason left, the silence in the house was unbearable. I could feel the weight of everything, like this crushing emptiness filling every corner. I'd never felt this alone, and the worst part was knowing it was all because of me. I kept replaying that night in my head, wishing I could take it back, wondering how I let it all get so out of hand. Every memory of him, the little things, the laughter, even the quiet moments just made it all hurt more. I tried calling him the next morning, desperate to hear his voice, to just fix it somehow. I left voicemail after voicemail, pouring out apologies, telling him how sorry I was, how I'd do anything to make things right. But there was no response. I sent texts trying to explain myself, trying to make him see that it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. But all I got back was silence. It was like he'd vanished, and that silence just tore me apart. A few days later, I even went to his work, hoping that maybe if he saw me, he'd listen. When I showed up, he was always polite. That's Jason, but he kept his distance, just like he'd done when he first found out. There was no anger, no raised voice, but his eyes looked tired, hurt, in a way I'd never seen before. I tried to talk to him, to apologize in person, but he just told me he needed time and walked away. That moment broke me, realizing that he was genuinely that hurt. I'd never seen him pull away from me like that. The days turned into weeks, and it was like every time I reached out, he only withdrew further. The more I tried to explain, the colder his responses got. There was no yelling, no accusations, just this polite, distant response that felt so final. And it hit me. This wasn't just a temporary thing. He wasn't coming around like I'd thought. He was really hurt in a way that I couldn't just apologize my way out of. I kept thinking about how I'd taken him for granted all these years, assuming he'd always be there, that he'd always forgive me no matter what. But now, faced with this distance, I started to realize that maybe he wasn't coming back. And the thought of that was terrifying. The idea that I might have pushed him so far that he couldn't forgive me, that I'd lost him for good. It was like this slow, painful realization creeping in. I'd lie awake at night, scrolling through our old messages, rereading the little things he used to say, all those moments I'd brushed off, thinking they'd always be there. And now they weren't. I wanted to take it all back, to undo every choice that led to this, but all I could do was sit there staring at my phone, hoping that maybe he'd respond, that he'd give me some sign that things could go back to the way they were. But every day, that hope got smaller, and the guilt, it just kept building, twisting inside me until I didn't know what to do with it. It felt like I'd shattered something precious, something I'd never be able to fix. And now all I had was this emptiness, a silence that felt like it would never end. After weeks of silence, Jason finally agreed to meet me. I remember feeling this surge of hope, mixed with a pit of nerves so deep I could barely breathe. I kept thinking that maybe this was it. Maybe he was ready to talk things through and give us another chance. I showed up early, fidgeting with my hands, rehearsing all the things I wanted to say, every apology, every promise. When he walked in, he was calm, composed, the same way he'd been that night he left. He sat down across from me and took a deep breath, looking at me with those steady eyes that used to make me feel so safe. But this time, all I felt was dread. He told me in the calmest voice that he'd been thinking a lot about everything. He said he'd realized he'd lost something he didn't know if he could ever get back, his trust in me. And without that trust, he couldn't see a future for us. My heart dropped, and I started to panic, trying to convince him that we could work through it, that I'd do anything to make it right. But he just shook his head, that calm, steady resolve never wavering. Then he told me he'd already filed for divorce. He said he needed to move on for his own sake. Hearing those words, it was like the ground fell out from under me. I tried to hold back tears, begged him to reconsider, told him I'd change, that I'd be better. But he just looked at me, hurt but resolute, and said, "Ashley, it's too late." At that moment, I knew it was over. There was no anger in his voice, no bitterness, just finality. He stood up, told me he hoped I'd find my own peace, and then he walked away just like that. I sat there for a long time after he left, numb, trying to process what had just happened. Jason, the one person I thought would never leave, was gone, and there was nothing I could do to bring him back. Update. It's been a few months now since everything went down, and honestly, I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I ended up moving back in with my parents. Adjusting to single life again has been harder than I thought. Going from sharing every part of your life with someone to suddenly being alone, it feels like there's this empty space that I just don't know how to fill. I've had a lot of time to think about everything, and looking back, I can see just how badly I messed up. I took Jason's kindness for granted, assuming he'd always be there, no matter what. I thought he'd never leave, that he'd just forgive and move on like he always did. But I pushed him too far, and now I'm facing the consequences of that. It's like I've been hit by this wave of regret that I can't escape, and I know I have no one to blame but myself. I used to think I was unhappy because Jason was too cautious or too reserved, but now I see that he was the steady, caring person I needed, and I was too selfish to appreciate it. I wanted excitement, attention, and I thought a night out in a dress was harmless, but I crossed lines I didn't realize until it was too late. It's painful, realizing that I was the one who destroyed what we had. And Jason, he's completely moved on. I checked a few weeks ago, and he's even blocked me on all his social media. That hit me hard. It was like this final reminder that he's really done, that he doesn't want anything to do with me anymore. I guess that's his way of finding closure, and I can't blame him. He deserves to be happy, even if that means leaving me behind. So now, here I am, trying to figure out where to go from here. Every day feels like this endless cycle of regret and what-ifs, and I keep wishing I could go back and undo everything, but I know I can't. All I can do now is try to learn from it, try to be better, and hope that maybe one day I'll find a way to forgive myself, even if Jason never will. For anyone listening, take it from me. Don't take the people who care about you for granted, because once they're gone, there's no going back. Thanks for sticking with me through all of this. Honestly, I never thought I'd be here, sharing my story with strangers on the internet, but I guess I just needed a place to put it all out there. Maybe, in a way, I'm hoping to find some kind of closure, or at least understand how I ended up here. Part of me wants to believe that I was just caught up in a moment and made a mistake, but the other part knows it goes deeper than that. I know there's no taking back what happened, but maybe hearing your thoughts, your honest opinions could help me see things in a way I haven't yet. Was I wrong for wanting a night to just feel free? Or did I completely misjudge everything, thinking Jason would always be there no matter what? I still wonder if there was any way to save us, or if I just didn't deserve to keep him in the end. So what do you guys think? Did I deserve to lose him? Let me know in the comments. I'm open to hearing it all, good or bad. Thanks again for listening, and maybe, just maybe, Sharing this will help me find some kind of peace.
Words fail me, and at this point, I'm struggling to come up with the right words to say what is on my mind. My husband doesn't even want to touch me at all. He doesn't want to look at me or even pick my calls. No wife wants her husband to treat her that way, and I am one of those women. I know what I did was and is still wrong. There's no excuse for that, and I don't think I'll ever recover from what I did to him. The fact that my touch grosses my husband out now is very depressing for me. It's not something I expected from him, and it's not a reaction I thought he'd have. I cheated on him with my personal coach, and now my daughter might grow up in a broken home. My name is Daniela, and I'm a 25-year-old gymnast. Gymnastics is something I love a lot, and I have done it for close to 5 years now. I am not an extreme professional, and I do not play at the national or international level. It is just something I love doing, and I play at many competitions in the city. I am able to earn money when I win those competitions, and sometimes I conduct training and charge people to learn from me. Being a gymnast has a lot of ethics, and there is a lot of training I have to do. I have to train almost all the time so that I can be able to perform and teach the people under me well. I am also a married man, and I have been married for close to 4 years now. I got married quite early because my husband caught my eye, Lowell. He proposed barely 1 year after we started dating, and I said yes without thinking about it because he is someone I really like. The name of my husband is Cole, and he is 28 years old. He is a dietitian and has been a dietitian even before we met. Our marriage is like a healthy marriage because both of us are very fit, and we like to eat very healthy. As a dietitian, Cole is very strict with the food we eat and everything that we take into our body. I also manage to stay healthy because I am married to him, and they are certain foods that he doesn't let me take. There are many times when I used to struggle with food even before I met him, because as a gymnast, there are many things that I have been told not to eat, but it was hard to keep up. I didn't even know a lot about the proper diet to take, and I did not want to spend money on hiring a dietitian. So when I met Cole, it was very easy for me to blend in and keep up with my diet. Is very good at what he does, and I am always thankful that I found him. But it seems like all of that is now a story for the past because there is nothing I can do at this point. I have used my own hands to put a very huge bridge between us, and I don't think I can honestly get rid of the guilt I feel right now. Barely 9 months ago, I gave birth to my first child, Nora. She's the sweetest soul, and she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I love her so much, and I don't think I can ever stop loving her. But having Nora was not easy at all. I'm not even going to limit everything to only me and act like I was the only one that was stressed and tired. Even Cole went through a lot during my pregnancy, and it was a very tough time for us. I think the physical aspect wasn't even the toughest thing I had to go through. For me, it was the mental and emotional stress that I put myself through. When I say mental stress, I mean it literally. It was hard for a person like me who has been all about my physical fitness and maintaining a fit body to suddenly have to go through pregnancy. I didn't think it was going to be as hard as it was at all. In fact, I never expected it to take a toll on me. I knew I wanted children, and I still want children. Cole and I spoke about it a lot during the first weeks of our marriage, and we had decided to wait some years before we tried having a child. Just like we planned together, we waited for almost 2.5 years before I got pregnant. Seeing my body change every day was not easy for me at all. I just watched how my body changed from its normal state to fit the body of a pregnant woman. Not even Cole had been able to make me feel better. To his credit, I know he tried his best. He tried to calm me down and make me feel better, but I'd been so absorbed in my own thoughts that nothing he said made sense to me. It was also very difficult for me to have to change my usual diet. I'd always watched how I eat, and I never eat a lot. I didn't even eat junk before. But after getting pregnant, my body wanted a lot of weird things. And I've heard from a lot of people that it's a normal occurrence and that there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't think I was ever able to understand why I eat so much. I tried resisting my cravings, but my doctor strictly told me that none of my former diets mattered during pregnancy. It was very hard, but I had to get used to it, so I did. Cole was helpful in his own little ways. He still had work, and he was barely home, but I appreciated the fact that he tried to be present in any way he could. It meant a lot to me, and I never took it for granted. But I still had to go through the pregnancy myself, and yeah, it was not easy. Now that I remember it, I don't know if I want to laugh or cry. My reaction to seeing my body when I was 9 months pregnant was crazy. I thought I'd never be able to be a gymnast again, but back then, I found it easier to adapt. I wasn't as worried as I was before, and I didn't make a big deal out of it. Even Cole noticed that I was not as cranky as I was before. It took me a while, 9 months, to finally accept the pregnant body. I started loving it, but my delivery date was due by then. I didn't work all through my pregnancy because my line of work expected me to climb on poles, no room for error. My husband rejects my touch after I cheated, my personal coach jump. Gymnastics involves a lot of physical action and body flexibility. I couldn't do any of that during my pregnancy, and it was risky for me and the baby. I had to close down my training center and sit out all the competitions I usually engaged in. I knew that once I finally gave birth, I'd have a lot of work to do before I got my career back on track and got my normal life back. The birth of my child Nora wasn't complicated at all, and it was all thanks to my husband and my doctor. They made sure I ate right and did the right exercises. I fell in love with my daughter the moment I set my eyes on her, and so did my husband. But our problems began from that very moment. I can never dispute the fact that my daughter was my bundle of joy, and her birth brought me the largest amount of joy. But her birth also made me feel insecure all over again. My body after giving birth to her was not the same as my body before getting pregnant. I thought I'd magically go back to my old body, but that was not the case. I am an only child, and I lived with my dad all my life before getting married. I've never really been close to someone pregnant or had a lot of lectures about how pregnancy works. I was a first-timer with no previous knowledge. I know I had nurses and the internet to give explanations, but there's nothing like hearing from the horse's mouth live and direct and seeing everything for yourself. I thought I'd be an exception because I was a gymnast and I trained a lot. Well, that wasn't the case, and it came as a big shock to me. I almost got depressed again, but my daughter helped me stay strong. I breastfed Nora exclusively for 3 months before I started going non-exclusive. I stayed at home with her for some weeks after she turned 3 months before I told my husband I was ready to get back to work. That was where the genesis really began, guys. My husband agreed and stated that he had no problem with me getting back to work, but I had a lot of problems with getting back to my previous body shape. I was very insecure and I didn't want to get back to class like that. Back then, I used to be the one that told my students to stay fit and not let their body get the best of them because staying fit was very important in gymnastics. But for me to be the one going back without staying fit was not okay. I needed to be the example as a teacher, and even though they all knew I'd just given birth, I was still very insecure. The first day I was supposed to go, I refused to go and I stayed home all through. When Cole came back and noticed that I'd been at home all day, he asked me what the problem was and I told him that I wasn't confident in my body. The same thing happened 3 more times, and that's when I decided to seek advice from my fellow gymnasts that had given birth before. I was not ready to watch my career slip off my fingers because gymnastics was something that I'd done for a very long time. Most of the people I met told me it was totally normal, and that if I wanted to get my body back, all I needed to do was get a personal coach or go to the gym regularly. They asked me how fast I wanted to start work, and I told them that I wanted to start immediately because I needed to get back to work and I'd already wasted a lot of time. That's why they told me it was best to get a personal coach. They said it was faster to have someone coach me and keep an eye on my growth. They also recommended some good coaches to me, and I told them I'd get back to them after speaking to my husband. When Cole came back from work that day, I told him of my plans to get a personal coach in order to get my body back again. Cole asked me if I already had some options in mind, and I told him that they recommended some people already to me, but I was open to more suggestions. I asked him if he had people he wanted to introduce to me, and he said yes. I told him I had no problem with him choosing the coach for me. All I really wanted to do was get a coach that was good at his job and could help me stay fit. I didn't care who he was or who introduced me to him. I also guessed that Cole must have had his reasons for choosing the coach for me personally. I just thought that maybe he wanted to be familiar with the coach that would eventually train me. I initially wanted it to be a female coach because I was not really comfortable with a male coach seeing me in my insecure state. But it was hard to get a female coach, and most of them were not ready to work with a woman that just gave birth. They said it would be more difficult to work with a mother because they would go easy on her. I didn't get what kind of logic that was, but I had no choice. The only great coaches I knew were women, and they were either booked or not ready to work with a woman. Cole was finally able to find a coach for me after weeks of trying, and I was very grateful for that. I needed to start work immediately, so I was introduced to the coach barely 2 days after he was hired. His name is Landon, and I discovered that he was a 30-year-old fitness instructor. He also coached gymnasts that wanted to get back in shape. My husband seemed a little bit familiar with him, and that made me quite comfortable. I was still nervous because I put a lot of pressure on myself and wanted to put in a lot of work. Landon and I started out very professional, and we never even spoke except for physical fitness-related topics. Landon was very dedicated to his work, and I was very dedicated to getting my body back to its normal fitted form. London also had a lot of clients to attend to, and I was not the only one. Anytime I went back home after a session with Landon, I always gave my husband feedback and told him how stressful it was. Even though I had a lot of reasons to work hard and not slack off, it was hard for me to get used to exercising all over again. Do you know what it means to have a 1-year break? I was practically a rookie when it came to exercising, and it was a very weird feeling for me. I even found it hard to go back to my old diet, and that was one of the major challenges in my workout. Landon was very patient at first, but with time I could tell that he was also getting very tired of me complaining about several things instead of putting in work. One day, he decided to confront me and ask me why I was not putting in a lot of work. I apologized to him and told him that it was just difficult for me to keep up because of everything that had happened. He listened to me and did not interrupt me while I spoke. He just told me that I should not let everything that happened in the past get in the way of what I wanted to in the future. Landon told me that he knew most of the things he was saying were easier said than done, but it was important for me to have the right mindset or else I was just wasting my time and also wasting his time. He gave me a book that he said I should read in order to set my mindset right. I was very thankful, and I promised to read back that book because I was really desperate for good results. After reading the book, I told him that I finished it after 1 week. He then told me that it was important for me to use my daughter's birth as motivation, because it was important for me to have a mindset that enabled Nora to be my biggest motivation. That was not difficult for me because I really wanted to do things right and be able to let her know that our mother did not give up when things did not go her way. Landon and I became friends, and I enjoyed the stories of other people that struggled with the same thing I had been struggling with. It was refreshing to know that I was not going through that tough time alone because I used to feel guilty and think that I was overreacting. I started looking forward to our classes even though we only had classes 3 times in a week. I really enjoyed the moments when I would be praised for the progress I made and when I would be complimented. I didn't even realize that I started craving Landon's classes. It was not something that I was consciously aware of, and I just tried my best to keep on going to the class. I also reopened my gym training classes because I was slowly getting myself back together. I had regained my confidence to a certain level, and I had been ready to get back to work. I knew that I was not fully there yet, but I just wanted to put one foot in and try my best first. Cole kept asking me why I was not done with the personal training, and I told him that it was because I didn't want to slack off when I stopped. Cole started getting very irritated with the personal classes, and even though he did not tell me directly, I knew that he was no longer happy that I kept on having the personal classes with Landon. I didn't expect to get such a reaction out of Cole at all. I used to think that he was perfectly fine with me having a coach that would help me regain my fitness. But his behavior after I reopened my training center told me that was not his plan at all. I just concluded that I had been seeing things, and I decided that I would not say anything until Cole told me what he felt by himself. I didn't have to wait for long at all because Cole eventually called me one day and told me he had to speak to me. I don't think it was a coincidence that he chose to speak to me on the exact day that I was supposed to go and see the coach. I had no choice than to cancel the meeting that day and tell the coach that I had come down with a fever. I asked Cole what was so important that he could not tell me the night before even when we had slept in the same bed. He just brushed off my accusation and told me that he had forgotten to tell me the night before. He told me that he felt it was about time that I stopped seeing the personal coach. I was really surprised to hear that from him because I did not know that he had been thinking about that. I asked him what his reasons were and why he suddenly felt that way, and he told me that his thoughts were not sudden and that he had been thinking about it for a very long time. He asked me if it was possible that I will stop 2 weeks from that conversation, and I told him that it was not possible. I had a very big fear of stopping and then getting back to slacking off. I tried to explain my concerns to Cole, but nothing I said made sense to him. He said his words were final and that he did not plan on going back on his words. I was very surprised to see Cole act in that authoritative manner. We actually got into an argument, and he told me he was not ready to have his wife continuously train with a personal coach that was a male. The funny thing is that nothing had happened between Landon and I during that period yet. I didn't even cheat on Cole before he started getting strict. Cole told me that people were talking, and he was tired of making excuses for me. I tried to make him understand where I was coming from, but he shunned me down and told me his decision was final. Even though I was not really happy with his decision, I decided that it was best to let it go and not say anything. I agreed to stop my personal classes with the coach on the condition that I had 2 more months to have my personal classes. Cole was not ready to agree at first, but when I told him that was the only way I would stop, he agreed. I was very upset that he had been suspecting me and that he wanted to cut my personal classes short. I didn't get why he wanted to be the one to dictate how long I did my own workouts. Even though he had been supportive to an extent, I was the only one who could understand what I actually felt, and he was just an observer. I told the coach that we only had 2 months to train together before I stopped coming to the classes. Landon asked me why I suddenly made the decision, and I told him that my husband was the one who decided on my behalf. Landon decided that it was first I started coming for my training classes more regularly, in order to train as much as I could before the 2 months elapsed. I felt really frustrated that I had to end the classes, and I did not keep my thoughts away from the coach. Never! He told me not to worry about it and that he could understand where my husband was coming from. We spoke more during our training classes and found time to discuss the next step. It felt weird for me that after each training class, I always felt quite awkward. I literally never wanted to leave the training classes even after we were done. That continued for a few more weeks, and Landon noticed. He tried playing it off at first, but I think I noticed it and took it as a cue for a green light. He started making funny remarks and bringing up conversations outside of fitness. There were times when he would randomly compliment my body and flirt with me. I don't want to lie, so I will tell the truth. I never stopped him from flirting with me, and there were times when I flirted back. Barely 5 days after we started flirting with each other, he kissed me after one of our classes. I kissed him back, and we ended up making out for hours. He asked me if I wanted to follow him to his house, and I said yes. I wasn't even thinking, and I ended up sleeping with him that day. I slept off and woke up almost 2 hours later. I realized that it was already 6 p.m. when I woke up, and I was supposed to be at the house already. I couldn't believe that I had cheated without alcohol influence. I did it without being drunk. Landon tried convincing me to stay the night, but I refused. I told him that I just couldn't continue whatever we had going on. He was very upset, and then he asked me a very important question. If you're not ready, then why did you lead me on? I couldn't deny the fact that I led him on, and I apologized for that. I told him that I just couldn't continue to cheat on my husband. He was very furious, but I left his house after saying that to him. Ever since I started training with Landon and going to train my students, my mother was the one who babysitted Nora for me. I decided to sleep at my mother's place that day, and I called Cole to tell him I would not be returning home. Cole was surprised because all through our marriage I'd never asked to sleep outside the house before. He asked me where I was, and I assured him that I was at my mother's place. He didn't question me after that. He ended the call, and then I switched off my phone. I slept in my mother's hands with my daughter that night, and I could tell that she sensed that something was wrong. She just didn't want to say it out loud. The next day, my brother practically sent me out of her house. She thought I ran to her because I was having issues with my husband, so she didn't want to keep me from resolving my issues with him. I tried to make her understand that it wasn't the case, but all my pleas fell on deaf ears. I had to just leave her house and go back home to meet Cole. When I got home, he was surprisingly at home. That was very unusual because he usually went to work early. And I asked him if there was any problem, but he just told me that he had been tired, and that was why he made the decision to skip work that day. I was not really happy about that, because the last thing I wanted to do after cheating on my husband with my personal coach was see him around the house all day. I didn't want to raise his suspicions by acting like it was a problem, so I just went to the bedroom with Nora. I had to give her a bath because we left my mother's place without taking a bath since we were in quite a hurry. I got her dressed up, and then she told me she felt sleepy, so I read her some books before she slept off. After putting Nora to bed that day, I found it very hard to sleep. I wanted to sleep just so I could ignore my husband. But sleep didn't come at all, and I kept thinking about everything that happened with Landon. While I was busy thinking, Cole walked into the bedroom and he asked to have a conversation with me. He sat on the bed with a cigarette in hand. He didn't light it yet, and I could tell it was because of Nora's presence. I was aware that Cole had the habit of smoking whenever he was stressed. In a year, it was possible he would only smoke a total of 8 times. So when I saw the cigarette in his hand, I knew that there had to be something wrong. I was worried, but I didn't suspect that he knew I had been cheating on him. By that time, I still had 2 weeks before I finished the personal classes with Landon. Cole asked me how that was going, and I just told him that I no longer wanted the classes. He asked me why, and I just said that I finally found my confidence. My main reason is because I didn't want to continue seeing Landon every day, knowing fully well that he had feelings for me and I had cheated on my husband with him. I didn't want to make the complicated situation more complicated, so I chose to choose the easy route. I asked Cole what he wanted to speak to me about, and he just asked me why I slept outside the house. I told him I'd missed my mother and just wanted to keep her company for some time. Cole didn't say anything for a very long time, and I didn't know what had been going through his mind. I tried to act nonchalant by acting like I was suddenly sleepy. I asked him if there was anything else he wanted to say, and he said no. I ended up pretending to sleep after that. I gathered my daughter in my hands and cuddled her. Cole later left the room after that. He came back some minutes later and dropped a note on the nightstand. I pretended to be asleep, but after I heard the front door open and close, I checked the note. He just wrote in the note that he wanted to go grab some fresh air. I was relieved to see that he left the house. I had my bath, then changed my clothes. I just had some noodles for breakfast before going back to sleep. I actually slept at that time. 1 week after I cheated on Cole and discovered that he had no clue, I thought he'd never find out, so I wanted to forget the incident and make my marriage work. I didn't want to lose him, and I didn't want Nora to live without both her parents in the house. I grew up without a dad, and I didn't want to be the one to make my daughter go through the same. Cole was hardly at home during those 7 days, so it was hard to get together with him. But I decided to spice things up with him during the weekend. After putting Nora to bed, I got dressed in a very skimpy nightgown and lit candles in the room. I feel like a fool now that I think about how stupid I had been. I wanted to be extra and set the mood just like I'd seen in some of the videos I'd watched. It was just my way of having fun and doing something right for both of us. I didn't get to work for 1 week because I had to stay home and think about everything that had happened. I came to the conclusion that I wanted to save my marriage, so I had to go through all those means. When Cole came into the bedroom, he was very shocked and his eyes widened in surprise. I blushed a lot because I had never done anything like that in my life. I walked up to him and spread my hands around his shoulders, but Cole pushed me away. I was very shocked to see what he did. I didn't know what to expect when I lit up the room and got into a skimpy nightwear, but I certainly didn't expect my husband to act the way he acted with me. I was embarrassed, but I tried to act strong and not show it. I asked Cole why he behaved that way, but he didn't respond, so I tried to walk up to him and touch his hair. He always liked it when I touched his hair, but Cole rejected my touch and pushed me again. It was hard to process getting rejected by my husband. I won't even lie. I tried touching him again, but he rejected my touch again. Instead of pushing me that time, he grabbed both of my hands and twisted them behind me. Guys, I actually got scared and tried to run away because I didn't understand why he was behaving like that. Cole looked into my eyes and started shaking his head. He was so angry that I could see the veins that were lined up in his neck. "So you cheated on me with your personal coach, and then you want to touch me. You think you have that right?" Those were the words Cole said to me. I was very shocked to hear that he had been aware of the truth. He told me I made a fool out of him and that I made him a laughingstock just because he didn't write off my feelings and cared for me. I started crying like a fool because I didn't know what to do. I dropped on my knees and started apologizing to him. Cole wanted to yell at me, but we heard our daughter crying in her room. She had woken up. Cole just bit his lip and told me to expect the divorce papers soon. That was all he said before leaving the house. I have not seen Cole since that day at all. It's been 8 days, and he hasn't even come to the house to see his daughter. My mother has been the one coming to the house, and she has tried her best to call him, and he has blocked the both of us. I got so tired that I just started typing away on the computer as my way of dealing with everything that happened. I saw that Reddit is one of the best places to share stories like this, so I decided to share it here. Update. Nothing changed, guys. Cole still rejected my touch after he came back 14 days later. I didn't see him for a total of 22 days. He just came back and handed me the divorce papers. Then he asked me to pack out of his house. My mother was at the house at that time, and she tried to beg him on my behalf, but nothing she said was able to get him to change his mind. He had made up his mind, and nothing I said was able to change that. I asked him how he found out, but he ignored me and chased me out of the house after packing my things. I told him that if I left the house, I'd be leaving with Nora, and that I will not let him take her. He told me he had no problem with me taking her with me. He was busy with work, so he couldn't just leave her at the house. I was very relieved to hear that, and I left without complaining. I told my mother to take Nora home with our belongings. I had to go to Landon's place and ask him what had happened and why Cole had a big injury on his shoulder. When I asked Landon what happened, he told me that 2 days after we slept together, Cole had rushed into his house and picked up a fight with him. He said Cole asked him if he slept with me. I was surprised that Cole would suddenly ask that. I was suspicious and accused Landon of telling Cole the truth. He denied that and told me that Cole asked him if I had slept over at his place. That was when I realized that Cole must have thought I lied when I said I was at my mother's place, and since he had been suspicious of me and the coach before, he suspected him. I then understood why Landon had not been home frequently for a full week after I slept with Landon. He found out the truth and chose to avoid me. Landon also told me that he told Cole the truth after they punched each other. I was very angry with Landon, and I accused him of being a snake. He told me that was his way of paying me back for leading him on. Landon also had an injury, but I didn't care. I just left his house and warned him never to reach out to me. Cole and I got divorced 1 month ago, and it's been very difficult. Nora keeps asking me where her daughter is, and my guilt just keeps on rising to the extreme. I can't believe that my bad decisions will make my daughter grow up in a broken home. I never wanted that for her, but I ended up being the one to ruin the home for her. I'm wrong and I'm guilty. I should never have compromised everything we had in our marriage. I should have stopped going to my workout sessions the moment I realized that I was getting attracted to the coach. I should have never flirted with the coach. There's no day that I don't regret everything I did, but I just have to accept the consequences of my actions and focus on Nora. I just pray she doesn't resent me when she grows up.